Hi, I'm Otuto, and this is SEO in 2025 Additional Insights.
Otuto, what's your additional insight for SEO in 2025?
My additional insight for SEO in 2025 is how to write content for the different stages of the buyer's journey.
So different stages of the buyer's journey. Okay. So I assume what you're saying is content has to be different for each stage of the buyer journey.
Very well, we have to prioritize different kind of contents each of these stages.
Got you. Okay. And in terms of stages, are we talking about awareness, consideration, and the decision-making process?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll just quickly do a definition of what a buyer's journey is. Buyer's journey is actually a framework where a customer goes through phases of discovering a problem he has. That's the awareness phase. Also, evaluating and researching about that problem. That's the consideration phase. And taking an action to solve that problem. That's the decision phase. So my focus on this podcast today is to write content for these three phases. Channel writes content for these three phases. I think then my number one tip is to create a buyer persona that would help us understand the ideal target audience and their various needs. To actually throw more light to all I've said or to buttress my points, I've created a persona, and the persona's name is David, if you don't mind. David is actually a retail manager for over 10 years in the store, and he wants to switch careers to digital marketing, but he actually doesn't know what digital marketing is all about. So at this phase, David is in his awareness phase because he's asking questions like, what is digital marketing? How is digital marketing important to me? How can it help improve my career? So at this point, SEO content writers should help David write contents that are informative and educating. Contents like comparison guides, comparison posts, how-to guides, and versatility image. So at this point, after David has understood what the digital marketing is, he comes to realize that there are various niches in digital marketing. Various niches like SEO, paid ads, social media marketing, email marketing, and conversion rate. And David becomes more confused. He decides to do more research, more evaluation of these various phases. And in doing so, he realized that in doing this, he's entering his consideration phase because he's looking at questions like, what niche should I venture into SEO? Which part of SEO should I take? So at this point, SEO content writers should also help David understand the in-depth of what digital marketing is, understanding various niches, and they should be giving content like in-depth guides, and then also comparison posts like the difference between SEO and PPC, the difference between email marketing and social media marketing. So with this, it will help David inform better decision. And David comes to that point where he decides that, oh, I want to do SEO. And that is his decision phase. And at this point, David is asking questions like, what resources can I use to learn SEO? How much does these resources cost? And then what are the things I can do to improve my skills in SEO? At this point, SEO content writer should help David with content that would give him this information, like sales page, landing pages, and comprehensive descriptive product description. So with this, David understands that, okay, I am ready to take this decision, and he clicks the buy button for the course he wants to learn. But majorly, I want to quickly run through the steps and the tips and steps I have to write content for buyer's journey. First of all, like that.
Okay, sounds great. Listen, just before we get to that stage as well, you've done a wonderful job of defining who your buyer persona is. You've explained exactly what his frustrations are, what he does, what he wants to know, and you've articulated why. If you have a very strong buyer persona, then it becomes much easier to map questions that he or she may be likely to ask at that stage in the journey.
Yeah.
How do you go about establishing the buyer persona to begin with, just before we move on to creating content?
So we tried to ensure applicants questions to get a picture of what the persona is. You would understand his demography, how old he is, what he's doing, his name, and what exactly he wants to do.
And where do you ask those questions? Sorry, did you ask those questions to people who are visiting your website through online surveys? Do you have discussions internally within your team, within your department, if you work in a company, or is there a better way to do it?
So if you try, we can try I try a lot of strategies. Like I do surveys, I ask people around, people in the company, and I still go further to do research on what people are actually looking for. This helps me inform picture of the person I want to create as a persona.
Got you. Okay, so you do a research to see what people are searching for to find your web pages, and that gives you an idea of what thought process they're going through, and I guess making it more likely to actually determine who that individual is. And in terms of surveys, what types of surveys are you talking about?
Okay, we do surveys like we do online surveys. We do it with already existing people we have, or people, friends that are interested in that runs. Send these surveys to them, professionals that are pushing, actually help us write the survey. We try to do both online and offline surveys.
Okay, great. Now, you were going to go on to talk about your content creation process, weren't you?
Okay, yes, I will get into it. So the first step is, like I said, create the buyer persona, and we're trying to understand the ideal customer and their various needs for each stage for the buyer's journey. The second step is our keyword research. At this point, we are searching for keywords that match every of these stages. For the awareness stage, we are looking for keywords that are informative keywords. For consideration phase, we are looking for comparative keywords. And for decision phase, we are looking for transactional keywords. So these are keywords we should actually look for each stage of the buyer's journey. Our next step is content types. At this point, we try to be particular about the contents we write. For the awareness phase, we are writing blog posts, we are writing how-to guides, we are writing comprehensive guides to help the person, the customer, understand what you are actually saying, doing, or what you're actually providing for here. Then the next phase is the consideration phase. At this phase, you are writing comparison courses, you are writing case studies, you are going in depth on what you already told the buyer about in the first phase. Then in the next phase, you are writing content, sales page content, landing page, doing a comprehensive description of what you are actually providing to the customer. So the next step we be going to is, after writing our content, to ensure that we optimize it for SEO. And optimizing it for SEO, you ensure that all your headings, your title tags, your meta description are well optimized to follow the search engine best practices. And also ensure to, at every stage of this journey, give a clear call to action. Then after this phase, the next phase is to monitor and adjust your content wherever you feel necessary. And you can use tools like analytics tools and search console to help you do this monitoring. You can get parameters like your customer engagements, your traffic, your bounce rates, and your impression or click-through rates. So with these parameters, you can use to judge what should I change, what should I not change, how am I doing well in this, what am I not doing well, or what I'm doing well. You need to make your proper adjustment. So basically, that's the summary of my two additional websites, 2025.
Brilliant. Okay, and to go back to your keyword research and identification phase, obviously you're looking for keywords to match the different stages of the buyer journey. Do you use any particular software to give you a hint of the potential intent of that keyword phrase, or is it quite a manual process to match keywords against different buyer journey phases?
I try to use softwares like Ahrefs, SendMuch to do this. When I get the keywords, Ahrefs manually to know where they can actually fit in the various stage of the buyer's journey.
Got you. Okay. And I noticed that in your consideration phase, you were talking a lot about comparison type content. Are you saying that it's always worthwhile to mention competitors in that particular phase on your website?
Not really competitors per se, because you might have various options in your brand. You might, maybe if you walk into an e-commerce store for a particular product, you might have different brands for a particular product. You might have one that does this function or it doesn't do a function. Just like an iPhone, you can be able to compare between iPhone 15 and iPhone 16. Do a comparison for the person to understand better which to go for, which not to go for.
And how do you measure success from people consuming your content in the various stages? So say it's easy obviously to measure success in the decision phase because that is some kind of purchase on your website probably. But what about awareness and consideration? How do you measure success from people consuming that type of content?
For awareness, I believe that when people come to your website, you are attracting more customers. You see people engaging more on the awareness phase. With that, as the traffic is increasing in that phase, you can be able to measure that people are coming to the website to actually understand this particular content. Same with decision fields, because they have more interaction with your content.
Okay, interaction with your content. And do you attempt to draw a line between that interaction and an ultimate purchase? Or is that too challenging because the gap tends to be too long?
It's a bit challenging because the gap is too long. But when they get to the decision phase, we now that they are ready to buy it and they make that purchase, at least we know that what was happening in the first two stages brought forth a good yield when they made that decision. Yeah.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time focusing on what you suggest in 2025?
I think in 2025, I've noticed that most SEO we write majorly for Google. We write mainly for search engine. And we forget we always want to rank, we want to be indexed, we want to rank and before indexed. These customers are who we are writing for. When we stop, as much as it's very important for us to write to pass all the Google parameters, we must also consider the customers, that they are very important people, because no matter how highly you are ranked, if the customer leaves your website, it is bad for you. So we also have to put into proper consideration the customers when we are trying to write our content. That is why I've taken out our live person, understanding your ideal customer so that you can write the thing. Because you're not actually writing for search engine, you are writing for your customers.
I mean, you talked about keywords earlier on, but if you're just writing for customers and you're focusing on buyer personas, is it not the case that keywords aren't as important as they used to be?
It's the information you get from your persona that would give you a proper information on the kind of keywords you need to write for them.
Otuto Umeji is a freelance SEO specialist, and you can find him over at otutoumeji.com. Tutu, thanks so much for adding your additional insight to SEO in 2025.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity.
I've been your host, David Bain, and you've been listening to SEO in 2025 Additional Insights, a Majestic series that complements the original podcast, video series, and book. Find out more at SEOin2025.com.